Eric, so good to see you today. Thank you for joining us on the Great Retention. So excited for you to just be here with us to share your lessons learned, entrepreneurial journey, and have a great discussion. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, great to be with you, John.
Awesome. So, wanted to jump right in and give the audience a little bit of context about you, CEO, co-founder of KarmaCheck, but also a little bit about the journey, right? I think going all the way back as a co-founder of LinkedIn and serial tech entrepreneur, and but would love just to kind of give a little background, give our audience that context. Also, tell us a little bit about KarmaCheck. What does that look like for you today?
Yeah, John. I started as a entrepreneur in high tech a long time ago. I've been doing it all my professional life. Started several companies. The most famous, well known of which is, of course, LinkedIn. It definitely got me into the people business, and figuring out all ways that technology can help people and help connect people. And that really, led to my current company, KarmaCheck, which is in this interesting space called background checks, which maybe not a lot of people know how it works, but a lot of people are subjected to when they get a job or when they get a gig. And what we try to do today is to, make that process of getting a background check a whole lot faster and a whole lot more convenient. So it's one of those things where people have to put up with it. It's kind of a necessary and painful part of the process in getting a job, and we're trying to make it more pleasant.
Love that. Sometimes, it's about solving problems, right? That a lot of people experience, and I think in today's day and age, the idea of creating more truth and transparency and trust online, which I believe is the mission of KarmaCheck, is absolutely a necessity that organizations and people need. So love that. And so tell me, and I think right now for KarmaCheck, a little under 50 employees or so, and I think you're fully remote, right? So distributed all across the U.S. Or are you international? So just give us a quick overview on that too.
Yeah, we're a little bit more than 50 people now, and we are fully remote. We've got folks all around the country, and now actually, branching outside of the U.S. as well, starting to have some team members outside of the U.S. And yeah, trust is kind of a big word in our vocabulary. That was one of the main reasons we started KarmaCheck. With more and more employees and workers, working remotely these days. We thought that bringing verifications to people's backgrounds, to help employers kind of vet out people's backgrounds before they get hired, was certainly a valuable and important thing to do. And so we operate that way as well within KarmaCheck.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of leaders, so just kind of going in this idea of trust, right? This can be a challenge when you have never met anyone in person, right? And you've got people spread out, and from a culture perspective, and so. But I love how what you're saying about what you're doing for your customers, in terms of building that transparency, trust. You're also applying that or helping to foster that internally with your employees. And so tell us a little bit more about that, Eric. So tell us, how has this influenced your culture? Are there any kind of experiences or lessons learned when it comes to this, kind of fostering this sense of trust and transparency? Just give us a little bit more, detail around that.
Yeah, of course. So the remote work culture is definitely happening more and more, now, especially after the pandemic. And we're very much in our own organization a model of what's happening in a lot of other companies, across the country and around the world. And we started, working in this way or I started working in this way even before KarmaCheck got started. In tech, it's pretty common to, have some remote workers, and the challenge is to involve them just as much with the people who are in the office, so that they can be an integral part of the group and just as productive as anyone else. I think what the pandemic did was to push that to the extreme, where everybody is remote. We have an address to our company, but believe it or not, it's just an address of a co-working space, so nobody's there almost all the time. And so we've had to wrestle with how to do that. And if I can just share one idea, I think it's really important that when you have a remote work culture, is that you do as much as possible to you know involve them in all the various ways, whether it's large discussions, even small discussions, and to make them very consistent, make the communication and the interaction very consistent. There should be no kind of second class citizen for remote workers. If you really intend to make that successful, you've got to involve them as first class citizens just as much as everybody who's maybe in the office working.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So tell it, because, and I know this is a big struggle, right? So I really appreciate you being willing to just kind of share your lessons learned in this area. So when you say let's share, sharing information and making sure that everyone's on the same page, how do you do that? I mean, is that like through all team meetings? Is it through certain kind of like scheduled communicate? Like what have you found that's been, I guess, effective in terms of making sure everyone feels like that first class citizen, or kind of on the same page kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I think it breaks down to a couple things that are important to observe, right? I think the first thing is really taking an intentional stance on this, and making sure that remote workers are really considered part of the company, the team, and there's no difference between someone who's working remotely versus someone who is working in the office. And so you have to be deliberate about it, and I think it starts with that, right? But then there's a lot of wonderful tools these days to help facilitate that kind of interaction with remote teams. So I'm not supposed to. I don't know if I'm supposed to mention tools by name, but there's
It's, yeah, whatever you found is helpful is totally fine.
yeah. So first, I think first and foremost is tools like Slack, tools like Zoom, and even things like Google Drive. I mean, those are the things that we use at KarmaCheck. And what they do is it allows everyone to come into the discussion, and so we have what's called the daily stand up, and this was something that came out of engineering circles. Engineering teams would have these daily stand-ups, but what we did as a company was we extended to everybody. So the business side of the house, the sales and marketing folks, it was really the only time during the day that everybody could get together and get an update, and maybe more importantly, from a human standpoint, see each other's faces, and kind of that proverbial water cooler, being able to just have some informal chat that gets everybody to know each other. And I think that's really important to observe that. And so whether it's kind of this daily stand up, or having an all hands that gets people together on a monthly basis to talk about something that's longer range. I think it's important to just make sure, again, whoever's in the office, whoever's not in the office, they're always consistently involved in these discussions, so nobody is left out.
Yeah, I like what you said about being deliberate, basically having a mindset that is remote first, and how do we communicate, how do we engage and that's kind of the first, I guess mind space that we go to is, okay, we know we have to figure out how to do this in a remote distributed team kind of environment. So verse and shifting from, even if you have folks in office, but you also, making sure that that is top of mind in any type of communication and any type of activity, event, so forth. Having that remote piece. Totally hear you on the tools, and just being able to communicate, through Slack and Zoom, and we use those internally as well. But I'm fascinated with the idea of the daily stand up. Okay, because I have, I come from a tech background, and I know, like, the Scrum teams, you do the 10-minute, 15-minute, what's your priority today? Or do you have any barriers? How do you do that with 50 people and make that meaningful? You know what I mean? Like, cause I just, what I hear from some leaders is everyone says they, hey, they want to have communications, they want to be in the loop. And then it's like, oh gosh, we have another meeting that we have to go to. Right. And so like, how do you balance that? How do you make that meaningful with over 50 people, kind of in that daily stand-up kind of format? I'd love to get little thoughts on that too.
Well, that's a very insightful question, John. It seems like you've tried something like this in the past, and maybe seen the challenges of it. So, truth be told, we actually had to evolve this format of this particular meeting. So when we were small, we had maybe 5 people, and it was possible every day to have every single member of the team during the stand up. The goal of these stand ups is to keep it short, not have it too long, maybe like 10, 15 minutes. But in that time, every single person in the company could actually, give an update. And so as we grew, that, certainly became, unfeasible. And so we started to, have, every, let's say, department in the company, a chosen representative give an update, every day. And we experimented with single person, then we switched it over to any person in a department could give an update. We would cycle through people, and as we grew even more, we found that was impossible to do within 10 to 15 minutes. So the latest approach that we've taken is we have a weekly schedule, and on each day of the week, there's a certain team inside the company that is responsible for giving the update on that day. So, for example, uh, today is Thursday, and so it's our support team's turn to give an update about what's going on in their team. And then tomorrow on Friday, it'll be the engineering team, and so forth. And so we found that format works really well, but certainly probably has to evolve over time as the company grows.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. Well, true, tech startup fashion, iterating on our process and learning and continuing to refine and make it meaningful. So, totally understand, totally, totally get it. But so, okay. So now it's, rotating by team, throughout the week. So, yeah, no, very cool. Yeah. I appreciate you sharing kind of just how this has evolved over time. So, going back, Eric, to this theme around transparency and trust. Another thing I hear, from leaders, and hey, this year, a lot of companies have gone through, some challenging times, right? Economic uncertainty. So, how do you handle or approach when things aren't going as well as you want? Maybe the goals aren't being hit. How do you balance kind of making sure that there's still that transparency and truth and trust, but also, just, I guess, being thoughtful about, just the messaging and what's being communicated to folks, and making sure people feel still, aligned and purpose and the mission. Is there any kind of experiences that you can share when it comes to kind of, making sure that you're fostering that sense of trust, but also, how do you do that when sometimes the news is not good, right? And you got to kind of, thread a needle there. Just curious, kind of your perspective on that.
Yeah, great question. So, I have long believed that, companies are a reflection of their leaders. The values and the culture comes from the top, and so as I've worked to become a good leader, one of the things that I've really tried to cultivate within myself, which hopefully permeates through the rest of the organization, is really this idea of authenticity. This is a word that means a lot to me, and when you start a company, or when you're creating a team, um, you have to, I think from the get go, kind of lay down the rules, and lay down the principles and the values that you believe in, and to kind of create the environment for that. And so, getting back to, I think, authenticity, I think it's very important to share the good news with the team, and also sometimes the bad news. In our time at KarmaCheck, we certainly had our challenges. One of the situations I remember was, we had a really large customer at the time. This was just a couple years ago, and they were our largest customer. We were certainly very excited to work with them. But what we learned, through that time, was that they, as it is with startups, uh, they were too big, for us to work, with. We didn't know how to work with them. We had to learn, how to do that. We had to improve our product to be able to meet their needs while we were working, with them. And in short, we just didn't know what we didn't know when we got into the relationship with the customer. We ultimately, kind of lost that relationship, and that caused us to kind of do a lot of soul searching, and understanding what went wrong, and where can we improve. And through that experience, we had to not only communicate when we first got that deal with the customer, the exciting news of that, but when things didn't work out, I had to communicate that to the team as well. And I find that teams appreciate knowing the truth. It's not that they become less motivated when things go wrong. Maybe they become even more motivated, knowing what's the situation and what's at stake. And I believe that's what happened in our team. I was able to explain to them what happened, in as much detail as we could, and we could have time for, which was a lot of information. And I think the team really, took that detail, and really incorporated it into its learnings. And I'm glad to say, since that experience, we've um, worked to repair that relationship, and we've maintained, great relationship with this customer, who we hope we'll have back very soon now. But it's definitely was I think a valuable experience for the company as a whole.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, Eric. I mean, I know that from my own experience, you learn probably the most through challenges. And I love what you said about kind of being authentic and sticking to your values. And people, I do feel like I feel like people can sniff out very quickly if you're not authentic, and that is probably the biggest demotivator. The exact opposite of what you want for your team. And so having that being able to authentically share the background, the why behind why decisions were made, what happened, that makes a lot of sense. It takes some courage, and it can be hard. So I respect you for that, and appreciate you sharing, just overall. So okay, so as you're looking at I guess future employee experience strategy as KarmaCheck continues to grow, is there anything that's top of mind that you're going to be focusing on to make sure that you maintain that entrepreneurial spirit, that sense of authenticity, the values. I know that you guys, do surveys with your people, and you're, just very intentional about, sharing kind of the purpose behind the goals and so forth. But anything kind of that comes to mind in terms of what you're going to be focused on as you kind of enter this new phase of KarmaCheck of growth and coming up, this next year, anything that comes to mind that you'll be focusing on?
Yeah, I mean, so many interesting topics to cover there, and first of all, I would say we're very much in a period now where I think remote work is the norm, and so it's probably good that us as leaders, we all get used to that concept and figure out how to effectively work in this kind of environment. And one of the things that I pay attention to is that I do believe that it takes a certain kind of team member or employee to be effective in working in a remote environment. And thank goodness there are more and more remote workers who are getting used to this kind of way of working. So the pool of good applicants will increase over time. But what do I look for in general? um, People who can be responsible for themselves. I know that's easier said than done, but when you're in a remote work environment, you really have to trust the people to um, get things done, and to be self-motivated. You can't be obviously micromanaging them all day long. Just can't work in a remote situation. So it's important to like look at someone and say, hey, are they going to be able to, um, you know, uh, take some objective and achieve it on their own without getting sidetracked or distracted and whatnot. So I think that's really important, and it's probably something that can be learned, but it certainly takes a certain someone who's been used to that to be able to work in that way. So I would say
Yeah.
that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. 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 There's especially in a a smaller organization, smaller team. I mean, there's no room for hand holding. People have to be a self-starter, and so there is that kind of mindset that just I found is where people are going to be most happy too, because they have the opportunity to just go after and get after things. So Eric, thank you so much. As we wrap up today, I thank you so much for joining us on the show and just sharing, some of your lessons learned. And one of the things that we do to always, as we wrap up, is we want to leave leaders, our audience, with, just a practical piece of advice that maybe they can go and implement with their own teams in a remote setting, let's say. But anything comes to mind that you can you share with our leaders as kind of a key lesson learned or kind of key action item that we can wrap up the show with today?
Yeah. First of all, John, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. I think one thought that I would leave with everyone is that I think this remote work culture is definitely something that is a change, and that as leaders we have to intentionally confront it and deal with it. And so, maybe some of the folks out there have already gotten to the um, remote work culture successfully, and maybe some are struggling to figure out how to implement it. And it is a struggle. But I would say for the latter group, I think it's important to really be deliberate about it. Is that something that you want in the long term? And if it is, to really have a conversation with the team about it, and that's what you want to do as a leader, and to talk about some of the things that are going to be effective, helpful in facilitating that kind of culture, so that there's really kind of group buy-in for this type of situation. And I think that's going to lead to more success for remote work.
Yeah, kind of a combined sense of ownership. People contributing ideas and continuing to iterate and evolve as the team grows, as the business evolves, and so forth. So, Eric, love that. Thank you so much for joining us on the Great Retention. Really appreciate you. All your experiences and lessons learned, just being willing to share with our community today. So, thank you very much.
Great to be here.